In this week's episode of the Weathering Parenthood podcast, I sit down with Paula Norcott. Paula is an IBCLC, or an International Board Certified Lactation Consultant, and we talked about all the different ways that parents are able to feed their babies. There is a load of information out there for new parents, and a lot of times it can feel very overwhelming, but Paula helps to break down everything that you need to know when it comes to your feeding journey. So Paula, thanks so much for being here with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
So for people who are watching and see that you are joining by Zoom, give us a little background on where you're currently located, and just a little background on you, who you are, how many kids you have.
Sure. So my name is Paula Norcott. I'm an International Board Certified Lactation Consultant. Currently own a pretty busy private practice in Maine. It is freezing here right now, but we'll stay anyway. Mom to 5 boys. So my boys range in age from 11 to 31, which is just as wild as it sounds. And each one came with a pretty unique lesson that led me to spending a lot of time with new parents to try to help them not have the experiences that I had in early parenthood.
That's fair. So you're an IBCLC, which is International Board Certified Lactation Consultant. How does one become that? I should ask. What are the types of certifications and courses and things that you needed to do in order to obtain, all the letters?
Yeah, sure. So it's different for everyone who gets here. So what you'll find is a lot of lactation consultants who become IBCLCs are nurses. Some are NPs, some are doctors. My path was a little different. I was a doula and a peer counselor for WIC as a WIC mom. They put me through some of my basic training. And I ended up here. It took a long time. It took me 22 years. You have to do about somewhere between 300 and 1,000 direct counseling hours. I worked in a hospital for a lot of those. There's a lot of different pathways to get here. It's not easy. We have to sit for an exam that took hours. It takes us 3 months to get our actual certification. We don't even get our test results for 3 months. It's a little stressful. You have to be really dedicated.
That's awesome. Are all lactation consultants considered IBCLCs?
No. So the lactation consultant term can be a little confusing. There's a lot of base level lactation counselor certifications. They have a lot of different letters. So CLR, CLC, CLE, and then that's usually a 40 to 50 hour course. And then you have to get 90 plus hours plus clinical hours to sit for your IBCLC.
Okay. So should people look more for an IBCLC if they're looking, if they are in new parenthood and, of course, we're all entering the feeding space because we're having children. Is that something that you think parents should really be looking for when it comes to, kind of figuring out their feeding journey?
Yeah, I think both are really valuable. I think for basic questions, positioning, someone to come to your house and check in and see how you're doing, the base level ones are great. I think when IBCLCs really come in is when there's more complications. So when there's pain with latch, when we have baby weight gain struggles, multiples, premature babies, those are where I think the IBCLCs really shine. I joke that the rest of them sort of triage the community for us and then send us the complicated ones. Yeah,
that's fair. That makes sense. So you and I spoke a few months ago. I did a story on sort of the judgment that a lot of moms face when it comes to feeding their kids, regardless of their choices that they make. So I'm going to ask you again, just for, new listeners we probably have, and hopefully there's some young moms out there or soon-to-be moms listening. Why do you feel like there's so much judgment around the feeding space and the way that parents choose to feed their children?
I think each one of mine was so unique that I can talk from both the professional and the personal experience. And it's so personal. It feels so personal. And I think what you find, there's a lot of division in parenthood, especially for mothers. I it's really hard for me to watch because I think dividing us takes our power away.
Mhm.
And I think if we spent less time sort of worrying about what everybody else was doing, I think we'd be a really fantastic unit together. But I think what happens is we fear as moms that if somebody else is doing something differently from us and it's right,
Mhm.
then maybe what we're doing is wrong. And as it turns out, there's just a million different right ways to do things. I formula fed my first baby. He's 31, doing fantastic. And I think the last thing a mom needs is to feel judged when we're already so hard on ourselves to begin with.
I fully agree. Yeah, obviously, when I ask this question, for those wondering, I'm talking about like new babies, formula feeding versus, nursing or breast milk, whichever, way um, parents decide to feed their children. Yeah, there's a lot of judgment, and it's like the first decision that you have to make. And sometimes it feels like there's so much pressure on you as a mom to quote unquote pick the right thing for you.
Yes. And I joke, you can't win. You're not going to win this one. Uh, you will do something that somebody else thinks is wrong, and you only have to worry about what makes the most sense for you and your family. And everyone should keep their eyes on their own paper.
I agree. Um, so, what I find most interesting about you when we first met and when I've been following you online is that you're so well versed in both like nursing and breast milk and formula. Why do you think it's so important for, either a lactation consultant or an IBCLC to be so knowledgeable of both things?
Yeah, that's a huge part of our training and our role. I have to put babies on formula every day because fed babies and babies who are growing are the best kinds of babies. And no matter what you read, there are people who don't make enough milk for their babies. There are people who take a long time to get to the full volume. And so formula is required. It's required. And there's a lot of misinformation on formula mixing and proper formula storage. And that's a huge part of what I do and what lactation consultants do is to teach parents proper feeding. So bottle feeding, formula mixing, pumping, at breastfeeding, that's all a part of what we do.
Yeah, I mean, it's confusing. There's a lot of things. So I guess it's good to have someone like you guide, new moms on their journeys in this, very stressful time.
It is. And I think we come without opinions. And I think that is part of what we really excel at here is I don't have an opinion about how you want to feed your baby or are feeding your baby. What I want is for you to have all the support to meet your own goals, no matter what that means. For some people, that's a week. And for some people, that's 3 years. And people want a combo feed from the beginning. All of that is appropriate.
So if there's a new mom that's listening or she's pregnant now and she's not really sure where to start when it comes to either deciding if she wants to nurse or do formula or do, you know, combo feeding, how does one kind of figure that out? Because, it can be very scary.
Yes, and you don't know which baby you're getting until they arrive, right? There's so many varieties. So my best advice prenatally, if you're unsure, is to just give it a shot. Um, the staff in the hospital, I joke that we can latch babies to walls. They will show you everything you need to know. And you can take it one feeding at a time. You don't have to make decisions long term. For some people, it unexpectedly goes really well. They go into it thinking, oh, this is not going to work for me. And then surprise, it's rainbows and unicorns. It works in the total opposite direction for people too. But you just don't know what it's all going to look like until you're doing it. So you can really take it one feeding at a time.
Yeah, I like that. Just try. And if it doesn't work, it's okay.
Yeah, and it's beneficial to a baby to even get one feed with breast milk. Like it all benefits them long term, even. So, especially in those first few days to weeks, that's some of the most beneficial time that we can give babies breast milk.
Let's say there's a mom who decides while she's pregnant with her child, I'm not going to nurse them. How does one decide on a formula? Is it just any, whatever color bottle's the prettiest, Like how does someone pick what type of formula to give their child?
Honestly, I think this is sometimes more overwhelming than anything else because if you walk into the formula aisle, there's about 6,000 varieties, and they all say they're the best one. And so, what I tell parents is it's all marketing. There are a couple of different basic varieties, and what most parents are looking for is a basic cow's milk based formula. And then you can decide if organic is important to you, if you want a European formula or an American based formula. And then you can buy the store brand because it's probably manufactured in the same facility as the fancy brand because it's all regulated by the FDA. So once you pick one, it's great to stick with one, but you don't have to worry too much about brand names. It's just all marketing. And some of these companies are really, really good at marketing.
That's good to know. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
So I want to go back to you can stick with the same one, that you choose from the beginning. But, in the heart of COVID, we had formula shortages. And of course, in the past, there's also been recalls of certain brands. Is it safe for parents to just like switch overnight? Like, how would that process work, especially if maybe someone's on one that's, maybe a little bit more sensitive for their child?
Yeah. So you will hear about something called gentle formula or sensitive formula. That's actually a formula with hydrolyzed milk proteins in it. And we don't recommend those for most babies. Those are for babies who can't break down milk proteins. So the problem with it from a mom's perspective is gentle is what we want, right? You say gentle to me for my baby, that's what I want. But it's really not best. It can actually teach babies to not be able to break down those proteins. So as far as if you're on a standard cow's milk based formula, yes, you can change. They're really so close. And again, that's a marketing strategy of you have to stick to one forever or introduce a new one slowly. That's not true. It would be different if we're talking about going to a hypoallergenic formula or your baby's on a hypoallergenic formula. Then you need to stick to the hypoallergenic varieties.
Okay, that makes sense. So going back to breastfeeding and breast milk now. I remember when I was pregnant with my first, I had to go online and order a breast pump. Why are there so many? And how do you choose one?
Yeah, again, it's, this industry has exploded in the last 15 years, and it's because of the Affordable Care Act. So once insurance coverage happened, a lot more players came into the market. And choosing a breast pump, I think there's probably over 100 varieties now. What I tell people is ask your friends what's working well. You can go online, like Reddit is actually a decent place to get feedback on pumps, but you need one that is a power horse. You need a primary pump. Typically, they plug into the wall. There are a couple exceptions to the rules. Those wearables are so cute and such a good idea, and it absolutely will not build a full supply. And in some cases, won't maintain a full supply. So the best way to figure out what brand to get is to ask a lactation consultant because we know, and we're not biased. Like we want what's best for you.
Yeah, I chose the one I had because I asked a friend of mine, I'm like, which one do you use? She's like, I use this one. And I was like, I'm going to get that one then.
Yes.
And that was just the way I made the decision.
Yeah, totally.
I'm like, there's too many. There's too much information. I don't know how to pick.
It's wild. And you're choosing on a phone call with a sales rep from a DME who doesn't have typically any understanding of breastfeeding or pumping. So you really want to know what you're getting before you get on the call. You can get on a call and find out what your insurance covers, but you should know, should have a solid idea of which brands you're really interested in before you get on that call.
That's fair. So you mentioned this before, there's a lot of times where usually you guys are sent like the people that might have an issue when it comes to feeding. How does a mom know if she has a supply issue? And is it Is it really that common to have one?
That's a great question. So, no, it is not that common, but yes, it does happen. I think I'd like to think that the hospital lactation consultants are doing a good job of pointing people in the right direction based on their risk factors. So, there are certain prenatal risk factors that put you at higher risk for low supply. And you can ask your OB that question too. Um, and how your birth went has an impact on how feeding goes. So if you've had a very traumatic birth, if you had a high blood loss, if you had specific medications on board, you're higher risk for low supply and should just start to work with a lactation consultant up front. But we also have this epidemic of everybody thinking they need to make 2,000 ounces a day. So thank you, social media.
Hmm.
Um, there are lots of oversuppliers out there. It breaks my heart to get on Instagram and see I make, 150 ounces a day, buy my $10 guide from some random human who probably just has those genes.
Hmm.
It's a lot of it's genetic and luck. Those two things are real in the breastfeeding world. So, yeah, like I think low supply is probably more people think they have it than they do. And when you do have it, you often don't know till it hits you kind of like a brick. And it's usually infant weight gain or infant weight loss that we start to see as a problem.
Or like not enough wet diapers or something in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you have concerns, if you're an anxious person or you've got friends around you who have had not so great experiences, there's no reason you can't hire a lactation consultant prenatally.
Hmm.
Um, Affordable Care Act mandates coverage with a lot of IBCLCs. We take it. You can do a prenatal visit and talk about your risk factors. And, I love to make a if this, then this plan for moms. Who usually hires us prenatally, though, are the moms who had lousy experiences with their first baby.
Hmm. So this might be a hard question to answer, especially maybe for someone that's just directly nursing. Maybe it's more visual, obviously, if you're an exclusive pumper. What is considered a normal supply? Like, you know?
Yeah, this is a fun one to talk about because there's so much misinformation. So your supply grows pretty rapidly in the first 4 to 5 weeks. You start on day one making 5 to 10 mLs, which is a teeny tiny bit, and by 4 weeks, you're typically producing about 25 to 30 ounces every 24 hours. And that's a full supply for a singleton. If you have two babies, we double that.
Mhm.
Um, so it's, and then it doesn't change after that. So from 4 weeks until a baby is taking so much solid foods that their volume actually goes down, their intake never goes up. And that's very confusing to people because it's not how we treat formula fed babies. So formula fed babies, we're typically giving them more and more and more. But the evidence is pretty clear. Most babies are thriving on 25 to 30 ounces a day. So there's a lot of moving parts in sort of understanding if you're making enough milk,
Mhm.
right? So what I tell parents to look for at breast is a baby who's very vigorous. So that's lots of big sucks. And their swallow pattern, once their milk is in, is 1 to 1. So one suck, one swallow. So suck, swallow, suck, suck, swallow. And for at least 10 minutes. And then a baby should pop off satisfied. They shouldn't nurse for longer than 30 minutes on a regular basis. And that's the thing is there's so much like, oh, some babies eat for an hour and a half. No, thanks. Like if your baby's eating for an hour and a half, there might be more going on there. And I think moms tend to have really good gut instincts and then they kind of ignore it because they don't trust themselves. And I think the very best parenting guide for most moms is their gut.
I agree. There's nothing better than like a mom's instinct.
Yeah, they typically, when they have issues, they will tell me, I knew it. I knew something wasn't right. And I made a phone call and it was brushed off. And I knew. And and I tell people, like, follow that. If you can go seek help, you don't need a referral for lactation help.
That's good. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, my first was So, well, then I also wonder, I never thought I had a supply issue because he was going to the bathroom, but I was his pacifier. Like he wouldn't use like he just would spit it out and would like give me the stink eye when he was like a week old. He's like, I don't want this. You're the human pacifier.
Right.
So I guess maybe instinct is or go with your gut. How would one think because I never thought it was a supply issue. I'm just like, he just wants his mom. He doesn't know where he is.
Right.
When does one think, okay, this is normal that he's just sort of like using me for comfort, or it is actually him constantly being hungry?
Yeah, I think the weight checks are the key component here. And I tell families we actually don't do enough, in my opinion, which is why our support group here, we have a scale available for everybody. You have a 2-day post-discharge weight check, and then typically not again till 2 weeks and not again till 4 weeks. And then we have another gap. We do visits up to 2 months, and then we don't do a 3-month pediatric visit. And to be honest, that's when the most chaos happens for families. So to me, plopping some lactation visits in between there, and getting a weight check for the first 4 weeks every week, and having that 3-month visit with your lactation consultant and seeing the consistent growth is the single biggest indicator of how your baby's doing. And I think when families have weight gain struggles, that is a system error, not a parent problem. Like, Lauren, how in the world would you know if your baby's getting enough to eat or not if you're at breastfeeding and they're meeting their output goals and they're overall happy?
Yes.
You wouldn't know. That's our responsibility. And where we blow it is we don't pay close enough attention to what's going on with families, and they're left to figure it out by themselves.
Okay, so going back to then supply, let's say somebody is an exclusively pumping mama, so they can see exactly how many ounces they're getting. If you're pumping 12 ounces a session at a month postpartum, that's probably too much. That seems to me like an oversupply, right?
Yeah. So we try not to diagnose oversupply until a mom is about the 4-month mark. And the reason is that there's several regulations that happen. So if we mess with a high supply too soon, we can swing you too far in the other direction. So there are ways we can manage too much milk. And so for a mom who's pumping 15 minutes 8 times a day and getting 65 ounces, I'm going to have her cut her pump sessions down to 10 minutes and keep an eye on it. But we're not going to do too much more than that, because very often people are just a little bit ahead of where their baby is. And then these regulations happen and it just kind of pulls back the volume. And if it doesn't, then we can get involved. Right. But for a lot of people, I see they pull back too fast. They're at 2 weeks, their baby's only taking 2 ounces, they're making 8, and they start only pumping 4 times a day. And now all of a sudden, they're only making 15 ounces a day and their baby magically needs 28. So you have to be careful. A little extra milk in the beginning never really hurt anybody.
Yeah. We have freezers for a reason. We could put it in there.
Yes.
So I want to
feel good. Have a little stash, right? It feels good to have a small security deposit in your freezer, a little insurance policy. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. It's like, yes, I made enough. I can I can fill the bag. I can put it away. It's nice to have a nice symmetric little brick in the freezer of, frozen milk. It's the best. So I want to talk now about storing milk and also formula, because I know there's different rules in terms of how long something stays good for, how long it doesn't. So let's start we're on the subject of breast milk. Let's start with that. How long is it good? Fresh, in the fridge, in the freezer? If the baby drank it from the bottle already, can they have it again later? How does all of that work?
Yeah. How cool would it be if this was black and white and that the information was straightforward and consistent across websites? It depends on who you ask.
Okay.
So CDC has a conservative guideline. So the CDC recommends out fresh. So when you pump it, you can leave it at room temperature for 4 hours. The Mayo Clinic says 6. So this is what I tell parents is ideal is 4. 6 you can use your judgment at. Um, and then parents, like, breast milk is alive. So parents need to know that when you pump milk and you leave it on the counter, if you test the bad bacteria initially and then test it again an hour later, it's actually going to have less bad bacteria an hour after it's pumped than it does when you pump it initially because it's alive. Yeah. So the guidelines are based on food storage guidelines, and breast milk is not a hunk of chicken. So it's complicated, and we don't do a ton of testing on this. So 4 to 6 is the general guideline. So out fresh, pumped 4 to 6 hours, in the refrigerator 4 to 6 days, in the freezer above or below your fridge 4 to 6 months. In a deep freezer, you get an additional 6 months. So breast milk in a deep freezer is good for a year. And the important part about that is doesn't spoil. The nutritional value starts to degrade. So if you have a baby who's 18 months old and you have milk in your freezer that's 2 months past its best by date, you can still give it to your baby.
Mhm.
And then milk in the bottle is a little more complicated. So once it touches a baby's mouth, the guidelines vary 1 to 2 hours. And the reason is that your baby's mouth has bacteria. And now it's been introduced into the milk in the bottle and it will grow really rapidly. So if you had a preemie, I would say an hour. If you have a healthy full-term 6-month-old, you can use your judgment and go up to 2. The one that there is no guideline for is if you heat milk and don't touch the baby's mouth. There is no guideline, and I tell parents they can do with that what they will, and I know what I would do if it was my breast milk.
Yeah. I mean, I've put it back in the fridge.
Mhm.
I didn't know what to do with it, and it didn't smell.
Right.
And no one threw up.
Yeah.
This was also before, like, I even knew that there were rules to all of this. Like, I remember when there's just so much information as a new mom. And so I was like, okay, he didn't finish the bottle, put it in the fridge. And then I put it back on the counter, whatever it was that I did. And he definitely like drank it and he was fine. Nothing happened. But I remember like talking with another friend of mine and I'm like, oh, you're like not supposed to do anything?
And he's okay.
He's fine.
Yeah. Where it goes wrong is we have parents who are like, I've walked into houses where someone's feeding a baby out of the same bottle all day long. And I have to say, like, oh, you definitely can't do that. And here's why. And I don't ever want them to feel bad because nobody told them.
Mhm.
And like, I'll drink out of the same water bottle all day.
Right.
I wouldn't think that there was anything wrong with that unless again, it's not a parent's job to know every little detail. It's the professionals in their lives' job to let them be aware
Mhm.
of these different things. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's good to, I guess, meet with a lactation consultant before so that you can,
Yeah.
learn all these things. So then let's talk about formula and making a formula bottle. How long can it sit out? Should you put it in the fridge? Once a baby drinks it, what are all those rules there?
Yeah. So formula, open liquid formula or powdered formula that's prepared with water is good for 24 hours in the fridge. So for formula feeding babies, so I was a doula for a long time. So I worked with a lot of formula feeding babies and I taught them to make a whole day's worth of bottles at once and put it in the refrigerator. And you're supposed to mix powdered formula with actively boiling water. And that is not on the cans, and that is not on most people's radar. And the reason is all these formula recalls we've had are about bacteria in the formula.
Mhm.
So actively boiling water reduces the risk of bacteria exposure, and it happens in the manufacturing process. So people think it's about the water. So they think, well, I have distilled water, I have spring water, or my water is good. It's not about the water. It's about the hot water killing bacteria in powdered formula. So you're supposed to mix it with actively boiling water and then cool it to temperature. And that would probably not have prevented this botulism outbreak, but would reduce risk for a lot of babies and all of the recalls that we've had.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. No, no. How would you know?
There's so much information out there.
I know. Well, and that's why those, the pre-mixing, those little machines that will pre-measure formula are a terrible idea. They're not safe and they don't measure properly. They give you too much water. They're real cool. The concept is amazing. They don't work right and they get recalled twice a year every year. So you're better off with a whisk and a giant Pyrex measuring cup. Mix it all up, pour it into your bottles, put it in the refrigerator, and then you have them already made for the whole 24 hours.
That's great.
As far as formula is a little trickier because it's not alive like human milk is.
Mhm.
So once it's touched a baby's mouth, it needs to be within the baby within an hour, or it gets dumped down the drain. In the hospital, we throw it out every single time. If a baby doesn't finish it, it goes in the trash.
Mhm.
And that's because we can't regulate how it's stored
Mhm.
there.
Good to know. I didn't know about the boiling, like active boiling water, making formula that way.
I know. And I think the formula recalls are so scary for parents. It really breaks my heart. They're terrified. And when every time it happens, I go on social media and talk about proper formula mixing. And all these parents are like, I never did that. And that's, again, not their job to know. That's our job. We should teach that in the hospital. We should teach that in the pediatric office, in the lactation visits. But it's not your job to know. And the CDC took it out of their mixing guidelines years ago for fear of parents burning themselves with boiling water.
Really?
Yeah.
That's
We can't reach.
wild.
Yeah.
What a reason to do something like that.
Yeah. And instead, we've had massive formula recalls in sick babies for years now.
All right, so I'm jumping all over the place because every time you say something, I think of a new question to ask. So let's say there's a mom who, in the beginning was combo feeding because being a new mother is exhausting. And, sometimes someone else can wake up in the middle of the night and feed the baby. So let's say a mom is I guess a few months in and is doing combo, but baby sleeping and they're really enjoying nursing or breastfeeding or exclusively pumping, whatever route they decide. And they want to increase their supply so that they don't have to combo feed anymore. How does one go about doing that? Is that really a thing? Can we really increase our supplies? How does that work?
It depends on the person. So we do it here all the time. I think there's a lot of what I tell families is if you're game for work, I'm game for sticking by you and giving you a plan. And if you start working to build a supply, usually it's just extra stimulation. That's the best bet is, okay, so your baby nurses 6 times a day. Let's find 2 or 3 sessions to pump in addition to, and tell your body you need more. And that's basically how the demand and supply system works with babies. What we can't do just yet is let a baby do the building. Because if they're not getting all the milk they need, then we could run into a weight gain issue. So we have to sort of play a game of, okay, looks like now you're pumping, you were getting a 1/2 ounce, now you're getting 2 ounces. Let's nurse the baby and just pump twice a day. And you know what I mean? Just kind of slowly baby step it into full nursing. I have had lots of moms in my office who were able to grow a full supply well past the time when they were told it was too late. It works way better if we do it earlier because it's hormonally driven in the beginning and then it's supply and demand or demand and supply driven. So it works a lot better if you can get it from the start. But I have people all the time who, they had a rough couple of days. They switched to formula and now they're like, actually, I want to breastfeed and we can get them right back. More babies, typically it's a little bit easier and the closer to birth we are, the easier it is. But during COVID, I had moms constantly who tanked their supply when they got sick. And they had weeks of being sick and we were able to get them back to full volume and back to breastfeeding.
That's awesome. So it's possible. Women can do it.
Oh, totally. Absolutely.
That's great. So when it comes to pumping, this is I feel like a hot topic, flange size. They send you your pump with, it's like the size of your face. And like, that's not, it's like the standard size, but it shouldn't be. How does a woman go about like figuring out her flange size, and why is that so important?
Yeah, this is brand new information. So it's only been a few years that we're even talking about flange fitting. So standard sizes up until about a year ago were 24s and 27s or 24s and 28s. And those are based on the dairy industry. So those are most common udder sizes.
That's very funny.
Yeah. And now what we know, and we still don't know everything, but what we know is that most people are smaller, significantly smaller, and they have less pain and better output with a great flange fit. Unfortunately, there is no like black and white, you do X, Y, and Z, and you get a great flange fit. There's a lot of trial and error. We do have a good number of IBCLCs now who have specialty training in flange fitting, and they'll get on a call with you. But what I tell parents is whatever size feels the best and yields the most sprays of milk the fastest is the right size.
Mm-hmm.
And you're not going to get a great fit till after your baby has arrived.
Okay, good to know. So, sort of on the same subject, how do you choose a bottle for your baby? Whether you,
Favorite question.
oh, great. Whether you formula feed them or breast, exclusively pump for them, combo feed, whatever it is, there's like, it also to me seems like marketing. How do you pick?
So, the ones that everybody knows about and sees the most are the ones who are marketing the hardest.
Mhm.
And my experience has been they are the worst bottles. We have some really excellent marketing teams in the baby industry. It verges on predatory sometimes, right? Like, especially with social, they know you're pregnant.
They know you're awake and desperate in the middle of the night. How many of us are ordering things on Amazon in the middle of the night because we are desperate for sleep?
Laura, when I had my last baby, it's the only one that I had internet access in the palm of my hand. And packages would show up at my door and I thought, ooh, I bought it.
Right. Like, yes, the marketing is crazy.
Yes, in the middle of the night, you can do anything. It's not the real world. So it's all fine. Yeah.
I agree.
So with bottle shape, what I look for, bottles that look like a boob are probably not the right shape bottle. And that's confusing because what you see typically is a round, firm top with a long, firm nipple. And there's nothing for a baby to hold on to. So when a baby latches on the breast, they have a big, wide mouth full of breast tissue. So what you're really looking for is nipples with a more triangular shape. So a gradual slope, a big, wide latch, something that babies can really sort of open their mouth and work in a more similar fashion. And if you're not at breastfeeding or don't plan to, it's less of an issue, but it still is that we want babies to regulate how much food they're taking in. So nipple size is really kind of a scam for a lot of babies. They don't need to go up nipple sizes because they're older. All you're giving them is like faster flow and less work. We want babies to work for food. It develops their palate, develops their oral function, and that helps with solid foods and talking. So bottle shape is ideal for all babies to be a slower flow nipple for most babies, not all babies, but most babies, and a nice wide triangular shape.
Okay. So I was sitting in my office the other day, and I had a friend of mine. We both have two boys, and they're both about the same age. Our youngest are 2 days apart. And I said, I'm meeting with an IBCLC next week. Do you have any questions you want to ask her? She goes, yes. GLP-1s, like the most hot button, not issue. It's a very popular topic right now. And I know a lot of moms, and she does too, that wanted to go on them or waited till they were done nursing in order to do them. What's like the research maybe saying about, being able to do both? Because there's a lot of things you got to stop when you're pregnant and when you're breastfeeding.
Yeah. So GLP-1s are turning out, from what I've seen, to be more and more magical every week. Yeah. So many reasons. There's talk now of treating perimenopause with micro dosing GLP-1s. I'm fascinated. Um, we have no idea.
Okay.
We don't know. We don't have research. Breast milk research is always the last to happen. There's not a ton of funding in it. So it'll be a while. What we do have is some sort of voluntary studies where women are saying, like, I'm going to continue to take my GLP-1s. I will submit results to this study based on what happens um, with me and my baby. And that'll be the first research that we have. But I suspect it'll be at least another year before we know.
Interesting. So sort of on that subject-ish, kind of, I guess. If someone decides that they don't want to nurse, or let's say they're done and they want to go on their GLP-1s because they don't want it to, they don't want to do both
Right.
because there's not that much research there. How does one dry up their supply quickly and safely? Because that can be painful.
Yeah. So I tell people expect lumps and bumps. I think a misunderstanding, if you've been breastfeeding for a while, is if things get firm, you need to remove the milk. And every time you remove the milk, you tell the body to keep making milk.
Mhm.
So if you think about if a mom has a baby and right off the bat, she says, I'm not breastfeeding, her milk will still come in,
Right.
most often. And we just tell them ice like crazy. Don't remove any milk. Take ibuprofen or another anti-inflammatory. And it'll take like a few days for that intensity to go away. And then it should get better. So breastfeeding moms are hyper aware of things like clogged ducts
Mhm.
and mastitis. So they're terrified. There's lots of different ways to wean a baby. People can do it really, really slow. They can take all the time in the world. And then we have people with medical conditions who find out they have some type of diagnosis. They have to stop breastfeeding right this second. Sometimes with physician oversight, we can introduce something like Sudafed. It's not my favorite because it creates a lot of anxiety for a lot of women.
Mhm.
And, a lot of us moms tend to be pretty anxious anyway. But we can do it. And that's why we tell you not to take it when you're breastfeeding, because it will dry up a supply really pretty quickly. But just reducing removal or cold turkey will work. You just need to know what red flags to look for. So lumps and bumps are normal. Tenderness is normal. Fever for more than 24 hours equals you need to call your physician.
Because that could be mastitis.
Yeah. We give them 24 hours now, which is a new guideline.
Mhm.
Because if you think about all the work your body's doing to reabsorb milk, sometimes your body's response can be a low grade fever, and like just kind of feeling lousy. But if it goes past 24 hours, we want to have you checked on with a physician. And then I also like to warn parents that weaning can equal hormonal shifts.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah. So a lot of people don't know this. They wean their babies and all of a sudden they have, substantial anxiety, depression, rage. These are all really normal hormonal responses postpartum. And they're also hormonal responses after you wean. So for a woman who's on an antidepressant or an anxiety med, we make sure their physicians are aware. And for some of them, they're going to increase their dose for a short period of time. Or talk to their physician. We make sure they have a therapist if there's risk for depression or anxiety.
Good to know. I have a kind of fun question for you. This is just about you now. Everyone always is like, what was the transition like from 0 to 1 and 1 to 2? And you're at 5? Like, I have a lot to learn from Paula, everyone, because she has 5 boys and I have 2. How would you rank your transitions as like a mom? Like,
Yeah.
what was the hardest? What was the easiest?
This is such a good question. So when I had one and I was 20. So I was of the mind, he was such an easy baby. And I really thought, Lauren, that it was me. Like I was literally like, I'm so good at this. I'm such a good mom. Why do other people's babies cry? And then I had my second and he had colic. So
Ooh.
he cried for 12 to 14 hours a day. It was brutal. He is such a delight now. And I think looking back, he probably was uncomfortable and had some other stuff going on that I wasn't aware of in 1998.
Mhm.
Right. So that one almost broke me. 1 to 2, it depends on the baby.
Yeah.
And no one gets 2 easy babies in a row, I don't think. I think a lot of people have their harder ones second. That just seems to be the anecdotal trend I see.
Okay.
But 2 is more than double the work. 2 is not double the work. It is
More than double. I fully agree.
and you go to 3 and there's more of them than there are of you.
Mhm. But then you can hopefully get the oldest one to help with the.
Yes, it depends on how far they are, right? My oldest was 10 when my third was born. My girlfriend has 3 and under. Those are, yeah, those are totally different worlds.
Yeah.
And when she says to me, I don't know why I can't get anything done, I say, are you serious? Like, the fact that you're doing anything outside of raising children is amazing, right? It's and the expectation now is like you have to work like you don't have kids and raise kids like you don't have a job and date your husband and keep a Pinterest-worthy household. And it's all a lie. Like survival and loving them is the most important part. I always tell people like loving them and then apologizing to them when you screw up are the best piece of advice I could give you. After 3, it doesn't matter. There can be 27. It's your standards are on the floor. They eat cake for breakfast. You tell them how independent they are for feeding themselves. I will say the good thing about having a lot is all my boys can cook and clean. They know, like, I get up from dinner and leave the table and go to bed. Like, I go upstairs. My children are responsible for cleaning the kitchen, doing the dishes. And so there's some benefit to having a billion kids, but when they were actually all just home this weekend, I had all 5 home, so they're kind of spread out. And every time they're here, I look at my husband and I say, 5 is too many. They're so loud. There's so many of them. It is hilarious. They're all exactly like us. And so all the things that you hope your kids don't do because you did it, chances are they're gonna anyway. It's a hilarious game to play of watching your kids basically repeat your life.
I love that.
And you not have any control. You don't have any control of it.
I'm excited for when mine get older now. I like to end each episode sharing a high and low from the week, but I like to call it a sun and a storm, or a rose and thorn, as some people like to call it as well, because of course this is a weathering parenthood podcast. So I'm going to go first. I'll share mine, and then I'll let you share yours. I'm going to start with my low. My low is that over the course of the last, I think it's been 3 or 4 weeks in a row, at least one of my children have been home from school, or both of them, for more than one day, just because like everyone is sick right now. And so that's just been like throwing us for a loop because one gets better, then the next one gets sick, and it's just been like ping-ponging back and forth. And my son now, that was the storm. The son is that they were both sent to school today healthy. So now our fingers are crossed that they're going to stay there for the rest of the day.
That's amazing. They grow out of that, Lauren. They really do.
Good to know.
So my son is that I had all 5 of my kiddos home this weekend. One flew in, one drove 3 hours south. And we had a great time playing goofy card games. And we're from Massachusetts, so we like to really like pick on each other. And there's a lot of snark and sarcasm. And so that would be my son, definitely. My storm is that Christmas, the month of December feels insane to me every year. And the level of the expectation of you need to be here and you need to be there. And somehow I also have to work 50 hours a week and, find time to be a whole human. I tell everyone that December is a non-existent month. Don't expect pretty much anything from me other than the bare minimum.
That's fair. Paula, thank you so much for being here with us today. I hope whoever was listening was able to get some knowledge and, maybe have some of their questions answered.
Yes, I had such a good time, Lauren. Anytime. I love talking to other moms.
I really appreciate it. We're going to link all of your information in the show notes too, so people can reach out and connect with you. And then I'm sure we're going to totally have you back on, because I'm going to end up thinking of 1,000 other questions that I feel like parents are going to want to know, or maybe they'll have questions and reach out to me, and we'll have to do a follow-up episode. So thank you again so much, and thank you all for listening and watching.